All right, third graders, today we are going to use all of the work that we did yesterday, gathering information about different types of engineers, finding their similarities and differences so that we can write to compare and contrast two texts on the same or similar topics. Get ready. All right, so let's get started. As we get ready to write a comparison paragraph and a contrasting paragraph, we've got to look back at that two-column chart that we created yesterday to make sure that we are using the correct information. So make sure that you have your two-column chart from yesterday as you get started on your task a little bit later. So just as a review, I've highlighted information that was the same or similar from both of the texts that I read. And let's keep in mind that anything that's not highlighted is information that was different between the two texts. So let's take a look at the paragraph that I wrote to compare information from the two texts. You'll notice, and I'll show you because I'll highlight it in just a minute, that I've taken any of the information that I highlighted in my two-column chart and I've incorporated it into this paragraph. You'll also notice that these bolded words in the paragraph are all those signal words that show me that this is a comparison relationship in this paragraph. So listen, Valerie and Julia are similar in several ways. For one thing, Valerie is an environmental engineer and Julia is a data engineer. They're both engineers. Another similarity is that Julia and Valerie agree that it is very important to study math if you want to be an engineer. Do you see how I'm highlighting these things that came straight from my two-column chart? They were things that I highlighted in that two-column chart and I've just brought them into this paragraph. Reading on, a final thing that Valerie and Julia have in common is that they both offer the same advice to young people. Try out lots of different things until you find one thing that you really like the best. And again, that is my last piece of information that was similar between the two texts. So as you can see, I've taken those similarities and I have incorporated them into a paragraph where I have also used those signal words that tell me that I am comparing two things, talking about how they are similar. Now let's take a look at how I've done the same thing to write, to contrast information that was in these texts. So now I'm going to tell you the information that was different between the two texts. And remember, there were more differences this week in the texts that we're reading than there were last week because we're writing about engineers, but different types of engineers. So they had a few more differences than they did last week in our topics. So listen as I read. Although Valerie and Julia share similarities, they are also quite different. See how I've bolded that signal word. As an environmental engineer, Valerie works to protect people in the environment. But Julia's job as a data engineer is to write code for computers and gather information about how people use computers and how to improve computer services. So I've highlighted these two pieces of information because if I look back at my two-column chart, you'll see the information about Valerie being an environmental engineer is on one side of the chart, and the information about Julia being a data engineer is on the other side of the chart. Let's keep reading. Another difference is the way that these women help people as engineers. Valerie's job allows her to help protect people from harmful chemicals in the ground, water, and air. Came from my two-column chart. And Julia helps people by writing code to improve their experiences when they use streaming services like Netflix. So again, these two pieces of information came straight from my two-column chart. They were not the highlighted information, so these are two ways that they are different, okay? And now it's your turn. So I do want to say that this work should be fairly easy for you because it's the same work that we did last week, only the texts are different. So you're doing the same thing. This is sort of a review. But let's go through the steps that you need to follow to make sure that you complete your task. First, you're going to go back and review that 2-column chart that you created yesterday. You have to organize your information. What things did they have in common? What things were different about the texts? Next, you'll draft a paragraph to compare the 2 texts. So you're going to write a paragraph where you include information that is similar, just like I did in my comparison paragraph. After that, you're going to draft a paragraph to contrast the 2 texts. And this is where you include information that was different. So again, you're looking at 2 different types of engineers. So you're going to talk about the differences between them. And last but not least, after you have drafted your 2 paragraphs, you're going to complete the open-ended task in Nearpod. Just like last week, you have a choice. You can either type your paragraphs in Nearpod, or you can record yourself reading the paragraphs that you drafted on a sheet of paper in Nearpod. If you choose to record yourself reading your paragraphs, all you have to do is simply click on the button that says Record Audio at the bottom of the slide and start reading. Good luck, and I'm so proud of you as we wrap up our ELA lessons in this year's Summer Bridge.